Hi, good evening and happy Chanukah, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, lesson 229, Hilchos Okhalin, chapter 16, and Hilchos Keilim, chapter 1 and 2. As we have mentioned, since right now we are celebrating the first day of Hanukkah, and one of the explanations that were given regarding the miracle of Hanukkah is based upon the interpretation of our sages regarding the passage in Tehillim where it says, Hashem tzilcho al yad yeminecho, God is your shade and He'll always be on your right hand. The reason why the Almighty is being compared to a shade where a person goes due to the position against the sun, so each and every movement of himself the shade will move accordingly. And based upon this view, we'll understand for what reason the Eden deserved and earned the miracle of Hanukkah. Since, as we are learning in the Talmud, when they managed to come to the temple and defeat their enemies, they were able legally to light the menorah with even a oil that was not pure, since, as we have learned many times, anything that is linked to a timely manner in the Beis Hamikdash, so b'moyadoi af b'Shabbos, b'moyadoi af b'Tum'at, even if there is a state of defile, a person is permitted to go and bring the offering, or in this case, the lighting of the menorah. Nevertheless, the Jews went out of their way, even out of the legal permission of Torah, in order to satisfy a higher standards, the standard of Hidur Mitzvah, out of their comfort zone in order to deliver the extra mile. So God Almighty in return was acting and reflecting a respond to their anhogo. Same way as they went out of their nature, the Almighty broke the rules of nature for them, and they managed to find the pure can of oil that, though naturally were able to last only for one night, miraculously it lasted to 8 nights. So in the end of the first chapter of our daily lesson, we will see a reflection and echoing of this particular idea. So today we are concluding the rules of Hilchos Okhalin, the impurity of food. So as we have learned in the previous chapter, in order for a food to become impure, it is necessary for him to be ready to become impure. And the prerequisites for him to be ready to become impure is any way that he comes in contact with one of the 7 liquids. In case that I don't know certain products, for example, bundles of vegetables that are sold in the marketplace, due to the fact that generally sellers would be interested to keep the vegetables in a state of freshness, and one of the way to do it is continuously to sprinkle any type of moisture or water. So since the assumption that they are constantly moist and the reality that every potential customer are touching the vegetables before they are selecting the one, so therefore the presumption that those type of vegetables who are in display in the marketplace for sale, they are impure. A similar status will apply also to flowers or grains like wheat that they are being crushed, since they also come and to exposure with any form of moist in order to remove their shell from them. However, even the above mentioned products that they are presumed to be tomei, due to the high likelihood of it, not necessarily that I know, only the likelihood is the fact that they may be tomei. So even if a am ha'oretz, a person who is generally suspected about his level of observance, the rules of Taharo, but if he declared and he testified that those bundles are not moist or they are not ready to become tomei, he will be reliable. Fish, however, since by their nature they are come in contact with water, and I don't mean the natural water of the sea that they are swimming in it, this type of water, they are not transmitting tumo because they are part of the natural water. We're speaking over here about this type of water that the fishermen will generally bring them in touch while they're going to shake out the water out of them, and in the process they will become moist. So this type of fish, they are under a presumption that they are tomei, and even ha'oretz, his declaration not going to be reliable when it comes to fish. Then fish, they have also the brine. Since generally water is being mixed in this brine, and the general assumption that the ratio of water that is being mixed is 50%. So at the moment that a person will mix even 1 drop of water, so under this assumption, the ratio will be a majority of water in the brine, and in such a case will be viewed as tomei. However, if he mixed any other of the liquids outside water, like milk, blood, dew, honey, or the above mentioned liquids, which making the food ready to become tomei, if he mixed them with the brine, so then the brine is not going to be tomei. Water generally, water which are defiled water, contaminated water, there is a possibility to purify them via hashoke connection to a water of a mikvah. Fruits, under any circumstances, they are under the presumption that they are ready to become tomei, because again, the exposure to moisture is very high. Towards the end of the perik, of the chapter, of the first chapter of today, the Rambam clarifies the relevance of rules of tumo, impurity and purity that we have learned until now, that they are relevant only in connection to the temple and to the holy offerings which used to be brought in the temple. Also, it is relevant when it comes to tumo, in order to count and to define the various degrees of derivatives of impurity that it comes in tumo. And the proof the Rambam brings is from the fact that the Torah prohibits only to kohanim and nazirim to become tomei, which implies anybody who is not a kohen or not a nazir have no problem to become tomei. Further than this, Even Kohanim and Nazirim, the only prohibition to expose themselves to Tum'o is only when it comes to Tumas Meis. All other Tumois, they okay even for Kohanim and Nazirim to be exposed to. However, there is the particular time, even for a Israel who is not a Kohen, to be in a state of Tumo, and this is the time of the Regel, the biblical high holidays, which each and every person is committed to be in a state of purity in order to be able to enter to Beis Hamikdash and to bring the korbanos. Nevertheless, despite the fact that legally, in an ongoing basis, a person is not committed to be in a state of tahara, the ways of Hasidim or Rishonim and the way of Hasidus even today, a person should refrain from dvorim tmeim, from defiled things, since purity is leading to holiness, and holiness brings the person to reflect godliness. And indeed, the Rambam, towards his closing remarks, he is selecting a specific passage in the Torah that proves the point. And the pasuk is "V'hiskadishtem v'histem kedoshim," and make yourself holy, ki kodesh ani, because I am holy, said God. And indeed, today, when it comes to the holiday of Chanukah, after lighting the candle, we are declaring that we are marking this holiday in order to remember the miracles which were performed via kohanecho hakdoshim, your holy priests. And one of the sichos of the Rebbe noticed that generally the holiday of Chanukah falls in the Parshas Vayeshev, where Yosef is the primary issue, the primary hero of this particular parsha. So we find something very similar between Yosef and the Maccabees. The Maccabees risked their life in order to protect elements, aspect of Judaism that, according to halacha, not necessarily that they were committed to risk their life for. And the question, why would a person do it? And the only justification, if they would be ordinary person, indeed it is questionable whether they're allowed to do it. However, if a person is in a state of a superior holy state, which is called Kodesh, then he is entitled to risk his life even for those things that an ordinary person should not risk his life. A similar thing we find by Yosef. Yosef was sent by his father to see how his brothers are doing. He knew very well that by going to see them, he will risk their life, since he knew their entire attitude, their hostile attitude towards him. Nevertheless, he went, since he was risking his own life in order to fulfill the commandments of honoring his father, Kibud Av. How was he doing? Since he was in the level of Kodesh, a person who is holy, he is permitted and he is in a spirit to go out of his way in order to display his connection, his deep, intimate, close connection to God beyond limits and boundaries of regular behavior, which explains what we have started the shir with, that though kedusha or refrain from any tumo may not necessarily be a legal requirement on a regular basis for ordinary people, nevertheless, towards the end, he recommends people who want to reach a level of Hasidus and Precious and so on to adapt that type of refrain from Dvorim Tmeim. The second chapter of today, which is the first chapter of Hilchos Keilim, the Rambam deals the types of vessels that they are susceptible to Tum'ah and they are able to transmit Tum'ah to others. Biblically, there are 7 types of vessels which they are mekablim, they are able to receive Tum'ah. And here they are: garments which were made from wool or linen, garments that made out of sack, which according to his definition is hair of goats or tails. Third is any type of vessels or garments that made out of leather. Fourth is ware that made out of bones. 5, metalwares. 6, woodwares. And 7, earthenwares. Though we have mentioned before that the vessel which made out of bone, they are susceptible to become tomei, it is important to note that not every bone is included. Generally speaking, bones of an animal will be considered sufficient bone that out of their wear, the tumah will be transmitted. Bones of birds, besides two types of birds, apparently that they have strong bones, generally wear that made out of bones of a bird, they're not going to be transmitting or accepting tumah. Also, there is another exception. Any type of a bone wear which comes from animals who are sea animals, they will be tohir, they will be pure, and they won't be susceptible to tumah. The reason, anything that comes from the water, kol habomin hayom tohir, anything that comes from the sea, from the ocean, will be pure. We mentioned before that ware that made out of leather will also going to be susceptible to tumah. But then there is also exception. If the leather comes from a bird, is not susceptible to tumah. Glass wares, biblically, they are not susceptible to tumah, but rabbinically, they will be. Then there is dong ware, stoneware, they won't be susceptible to tumah, not transmit and not to accept tumah. Earthenware, the only way that they will be susceptible to tumah, only receptacle type of ware. It's called mekablehem. Cups, for example, is called mekablehem because they are receptacle. However, flatware, earthenware that they are flat, they are not susceptible to mekabel tumah. Metal, however, whether flatware or receptacle ware, will be exposed to tumah. When it comes to wooden ware, biblically, only if they have a receptacle, if it is flat wooden ware, biblically, they're not susceptible to tumah. Rabbinically, they will be susceptible under certain conditions to tumah, which later are going to be covered in detail. When it comes to the tumah of midras, as we have covered, this is the type of the sitting or the laying platform for the zav. So then even woodenware and even biblically they will be mekablim tumo, they will be susceptible to tumo, even biblically. In the third chapter, the Rambam deals with different materials which a person with his own hand carving, he will be able to create a ware that will be susceptible to tumo. For example, if a person took a shell of a nut and carved into them a receptacle, even acher shoite v'koten, minor or mentally challenged individual have carved, despite the fact that they have no legal intention which are recognizable as a serious, as a meaningful thought, nevertheless, yesh lohem maaseh, they have an act. So even if they have carved, this type of receptacle will be ready for tumo. There are, however, type of shells of certain fruit. For example, he brings a case of a esrog or a pumpkin, since they cannot have a long-lasting sustainability to stay as a receptacle. So even though he managed to carve a receptacle, they will be tohir, they will remain pure. In the same chapter, the Rambam deals about different scenario where flat woodenware, for example, certain stick that a person managed to carve in them a receptacle to contain some water or to hide some coins, despite the fact that we're speaking over here about flat woodenware that biblically they're not susceptible to tumo, but nevertheless, since he carved them a base kibul, a receptacle that is being used for this purpose, he will be ready for tumo. Nevertheless, mideoiraiso, the only part that serves him directly will be mekabel tumo. Anything outside won't be mekabel tumo. However, miderabonon, rabbinically, the tumo will be spreading to the entire ware as long as part of the ware is carved with a receptacle. Nevertheless, if under certain condition, if this carving were done in order to fill up the carving on a permanent basis, for example, a person took a wooden log and carved a hole in order to place over there an anvil for a metal smith. So, despite the fact that he carved a receptacle, but nevertheless, since the anvil will be there forever, then this log will be pure, since the receptacle is being filled up, but it's a permanent filling. If we're speaking about a goldsmith or silversmith, that a person will every now and then will remove the anvil in order to clean the log from any traces of gold and silver that remain in them, in such a case, the log will be tomei. Another example where a receptacle itself is not going to be a reason to view this vessel as tomei. When a person took a spoon and placed on top of the spoon the support of the bed, or support of the legs of the bed. In such a case, this particular spoon not going to be tomei. The reason, because the purpose over here is not to fill up the receptacle, but in order to support the bed. There are different tubes. There are tubes which are made out of straw. So straw tube will be mekabel tumo, will accept impurity like any type of kli eitz, because a tube of straw can contain some drops of water. A tube of a reed will be mekabel tumo, will be accepting impurity only if he will remove the sap that is inside the reed in order for the tube to become a receptacle. Certain type of tubes which are mainly food products, under any condition they will be tohir from Tumas Keilim because it is considered like food. There is a tube of mezuzah, so will depend whether the person already placed the mezuzah inside the tube and later on he placed it, not on a permanent basis, in the wall. So since he first placed the mezuzah and then he placed it on the wall, the tube will always going to be mekabel tumo. Even when he attached it to the wall on a permanent basis, it's called kvo'o bakoisel, as long as he was koiveya on a permanent basis kederech kabaloso, in such a way that the bottom is on bottom and the opening is on top, which means the shape of a kli, the shape of a receptacle is still there, will be mekabel tumo. However, if he attached it to the wall on a permanent basis, sheloi kederech kabeloso, which means the opening is on the bottom, so then it won't be mekabel tumo, because then I will view it as part of the wall. If the order was the opposite, which means first he gave it in the koisel and later he was koiveya the mezuzo, he placed the mezuzo, so in such a case, only if he placed it, not attached it, but placed it, derech kabbalah, only then it will be mekabel tumo. But when it comes to kvius bakoisel, when he actually attached it to the wall, attached it on a permanent basis, either way, it's not going to be mekabel tumo, since the receptacle came to use only way later, after it was already attached to the wall and then became part of the wall, so it cannot be viewed as a kli any longer. A leather, which a person were using it in order to store a diamond, due to the fact that the length of storing and the frequency of taking out the diamond is very seldom, so throughout the time a receptacle were created, and therefore even after taking out the diamond from that type of leather, the remains and the trace of the carve of the hole that the diamond or pearl have created will be noticeable. For that reason, it will be susceptible for tumo. If the purpose of this leather was to store any type of coins, due to the frequency of removal of coins, so no chance to form any receptacle over there took place, and for that reason, in such a case, it will be tohil. Thank you very much and happy Chanukah to everybody.